As discussed in the previous section of this dissertation,
that's exactly what I was saying.
Demetrius's attempted expedition into the Indian subcontinent had some initial success, but was ultimately futile. Even though Demetrius I initially succeeded in conquering huge amounts of territory in India, he was eventually forced to retreat from India and return to Bactria because of a civil conflict, and ultimately lost all of his newly conquered Indian territories to a resurgent Shunga Empire. Thus, the Greek attempt to assimilate India into their cultural sphere of influence through military conquest failed.
Perfect.
More specifically, the reason why Demetrius I's invasion of India did not have any lasting success is because the king, rather than establishing mercantile...
Well, you are saying there are some things that are lasting, aren't you? So how about apparent lasting?
Any apparent lasting success is
because... It's safe to, I think, better to hedge your bets. Go ahead. No.
Is because the king, rather than establishing military, economic, and diplomatic connections with local Indian monarchs, simply marched with his armies into the Indian subcontinent, burned several cities, and then besieged Pataliputra. Even ignoring the internal rebellion that...
The internal rebellion would have helped him, right? So failing to enjoin the rebels or exploit the chaos resulting from an internal rebellion, right? No.
He simply... And then besieged... Even ignoring the internal rebellion that occurred in Bactria... Yes, Bactria, not India.
Oh.
This emphasis on military force over politics and diplomacy is the main reason why the Shungas were able to reaffirm their control over Pataliputra with such great ease. However, the failure of Demetrius' wars against Pataliputra does not mean that there was never any successful interaction between Greek and native Indian civilizations afterwards. As discussed earlier, one of the things that Demetrius I did once he crossed the Hindu Kush, it's a mountain range that runs through Afghanistan.
Okay, what can you say any instead of including afterwards? Because then, you know, maybe you can, some of the influence was his or something.
Okay.
No?
Okay.
No, you don't have to change it.
As discussed earlier, one of the things that Demetrius I did once he crossed the Hindu Kush was establish secondary capital at the traditional trading site of Taxila, and left his son Demetrius II as his sub-king to govern all the country between the Hindu Kush and the Indus. Thus, Taxila became an advanced base for the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, and the Indo-Greek kingdom officially began as a sub-kingdom of the Greco-Bactrian dominions. Furthermore, even after Eucratides overthrew the branch of the Titamid dynasty that dwelled in Bactria, the descendants of Demetrius II continued to rule from Taxila for a few centuries afterwards. According to John Middleton, Menander was a successor of the great Bactrian ruler Demetrius II and the dynasty of Euthydemus I. Meanwhile, Tarn describes Menander as a general of Demetrius I who was left as the main Greek king in India because of the deaths of Demetrius and Apollodotus, and the return of Eucratides to Bactria. Because Menander was not part of the main royal line of the Euthydemus dynasty, Tarn suggests that he married Demetrius' daughter Agathoclea. In order to solidify his claim to the Indo-Greek throne. This suggests that Menander may have initially been motivated by a desire to compensate for the mistakes that Demetrius I made during his invasion. It is inaccurate. It is inaccurate to say that Menander completely abandoned traditional Greek religion and iconography in his conversion to Buddhism. completely converted to Buddhism. According to an image found on one coin, Menander continued to distinguish himself as the king and savior Menander on his coinage in the Greek language. This suggests that Menander still sought to be seen primarily as a Greek ruler rather than as primarily an Indian ruler. Furthermore, he was also not the first Greek king to use the Kharosthi writing system on his currency. That was Demetrius the First, or I say Demetrius the First was the first Indo-Greek king, while sorry at myself for making that mistake.
I can understand. Just
While Demetrius II, that was Demetrius II, the aforementioned son of Demetrius I, who was made king of Taxila. Demetrius I also used the Kharosthi syllabary on his currency despite not being an Indo-Greek king. Indeed, Menander was not even the first Greek king to realize that he needed to establish a connection between Hellenistic and Indian cultures in order for his kingdom to be successful. Obviously, Demetrius II's choice to adopt Kharosthi script on his coinage indicates that he wanted his decrees and royal authority to be understood by both Greeks and Indians.
So they are using diplomacy.
Yeah, they realize the mistakes.
Have you not said that? They have begun to correct the mistakes of seems to be an effort to, or however inadvertent, or however you want to say it. No, you don't have to put down what I say. You just have to keep the question in your head and see if you've answered it. That's all. I'm not saying that I know what I'm talking about. I'm just asking the questions of the naive, annoying. You really say, how can we say there's any? Well, because they changed their approach. Well, maybe not. I could be completely wrong, because remember, I have no expertise in this at all. It's the first time hearing any of it. I know nothing.
Obviously, Demetrius II's choice to adopt Kharosthi script on his coinage indicates that he wanted his decrees and royal authority to be understood by both Greeks and Indians.
Well, you can't say obviously, you can say it would seem, right? I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. That's a lawyer thing. Or logically, or it would appear.
I just wrote seems to indicate.
Okay, good.
Thus, it seems that Demetrius II also recognized his father's mistakes and sought to be a better king. However, John Middleton indicates that instead of the classic...
A better king?
A more successful king? I'll just say better king.
No, so to... a more unifying? Would you say that was correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The words, they're so tricky, but they mean so much.
However, John Middleton indicates that instead of the classic conqueror image found on most coins of the Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek rulers, Menander's image is gentle and almost effeminate, with delicate features and curls. And the inscriptions the inscriptions on Menander's coins describe him as Basileos, king, and Soter, savior, rather than conqueror or patriot. This suggests that Menander, despite having been a general before he became king, saw himself as more of a peacemaking and administrator.
Unifier.
Rather than a warrior like Demetrius I or Alexander the Great. This is consistent with the general Buddhist ideals of pacifism, thus laying credence to the idea of King Menander embracing certain aspects of Buddhism.
Well said.
Indeed, the most reliable surviving source about Menander's life is a Buddhist dialogue entitled the Milinda Panya, More Questions of Melinda. In this book, a king named Melinda discusses the teachings of Buddhism with a sage named Nagasena. In one early passage of the book, Melinda is said to have come from the city of Sagala in the country of the Yanakas. The term Yanaka seems to be an obvious cognate to the word Yona, a known term that native Indian peoples used to describe the Greeks.
There you go.
This is the main piece of evidence in the Milinda Panya that the Melinda in this book is a Greek king as opposed to a native Indian monarch. Furthermore, King Melinda claims to have been born in an island called Alessandra, a city that, according to Getzel M. Cohen, is also mentioned in the Pali epic Mahavamsa. Pali is the liturgical language of the early Buddhist scriptures. As Alessandra, city of the city of the Yonas.
Oh, there you go.
Although there is some debate as to the location of this city of Alessandra, both the name and the reference to it as the city of the Yonas suggest that it is one of the many Alexandrias that the Greeks founded throughout the lands that they settled. This proves in a fairly definitive manner that Melinda was a Greek king. Furthermore, there is also
This is very...
numismatic, you know what that is, coinage?
Yes. Speak it down to your mama.
Evidence that indicates Menander's acceptance of Buddhism. Although Menander does not seem to have claimed himself to be a Chakravartin, world emperor, callbacks using words from the... He did place both a palm branch and a wheel, the latter being the traditional Indian symbol of the Wheel of Justice, on his currency. Meanwhile, the coins of a much later monarch named Menander II, this one surnamed Dikaios, the Just, continued to portray
Sorry, buddy.
these symbols. This suggests that, unlike Akhenaten's abortive attempts to make Aten the only god of Egypt, Buddhism continued to be a major component of the Indo-Greek identity after Menander's death, the first death. Furthermore, just as Buddhism began to influence the art of the coinage of the Indo-Greeks in some
He was able to implement a theocratic, or sustain a theocratic amalgamation. Semi-theocratic.
just as Buddhism began to influence the coinage of the Indo-Greeks, in some subtle but substantial ways, Greek art also began to influence the artworks that the native Indians created. For example, there are certain depictions of the Buddhist protector god Vajrapani that adopt aspects of Heracles, including how Vajrapani stands in what Ladislav Stancho describes as a relaxed Praxitelian posture with his head slightly inclined and facing left and covered with a lion skin, in one image discovered at Tepe Shotor.
Where's that?
It's in Afghanistan, Pakistan. Afghanistan. According to Lisa Schwab, this is a sharp contrast with the image of a pot-bellied man wearing a turban and jewelry
Oh, Trump.
that defined previous images of Vajrapani, proving that the image of this god was indeed influenced by Greek images of Heracles. There are also surviving statues of the Buddha himself that depict him standing in a pose highly reminiscent of statues used from the Hellenistic world, while also having wavy hair topped by a bun tied with a ribbon, and wearing a toga.
Oh no, he lives in Shoreditch.
Indeed, Jackson Spielvogel explicitly compares one statue of the Buddha found in the National Museum of Pakistan in Karachi to a terracotta statuette of a young woman made as a tomb offering in Thebes.
Ah.
Even in the present day, the aforementioned bun tied with a ribbon is still a common aesthetic feature of on statues of saints or Brahmins in Hindu religious artwork, and is still an iconic feature of Buddhist statues in many Buddhist temples.
There you go. That's why they love it. The metrosexuals is very Buddhist.
However, as has already been discussed, In the section on Demetrius I's possible Buddhist motives, no Hellenistic king would ever have supported one religion against another, for one of the cardinal tenets of Greeks in the Hellenistic centuries was that no man's religion was anyone's business but his own. So initially it may seem strange that Menander would embrace Buddhism as a replacement for traditional Greek religion.
And then place it in a political context. Right? I'm wrong? Okay. Sorry.
Replacement does imply a political dimension.
It does. I didn't know that.
You know, because he's
I thought it implied only a theological.
You know, replacing it as the state as the political.
All right. It's unsaid. Go ahead.
However, this makes sense once it is realized that Menander did not actually convert to Buddhism. Rather than he served as a patron of Buddhist art and religious establishments, but remained loyal to the traditional Hellenistic deities as well.
I didn't know that.
It is possible to know how Menander approached the Buddhist religion from his coinage.
Ah, thank you. There you go.
According to Narayan, Menander had the most diverse range of coins from amongst all the Greco-Bactrian and or Indo-Greek kings. While some of Menander's coins portrayed Buddhist and or native Indian imagery, such as a wheel that may indeed be the Buddhist wheel of justice, the wheel of justice. They also display classically Hellenic imagery, such as Pallas hurling the thunderbolt and the helmeted bust of a king and the goddess Nike, victory.
Trainers.
If Menander had actually wanted to assimilate with his Indian subjects completely, his coins would not have borne what Frank Holt describes as the warlike insignia of a conqueror's hometown 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
However, because Menander was a capable
Bit of a butt wag.
because Menander was a capable and intelligent monarch, he realized that he needed to appear to respect both his native Indian subjects and his Indo-Greek subjects. Thus, just as the Ptolemaic monarchs of Egypt adopted, I accidentally used the present tense, adopt, rather than adopted.
Right, got it.
The appearance and signifiers of their pharaonic predecessors in order to present themselves as the true successors to the pharaohs, so did Menander offer patronage to a native Indian religion
To show himself as successor.
as properly Indian. In Ptolemy I's case and in Menander's case, neither Greek population completely assimilated themselves into the native populations of the lands in which they settled. Rather, they adopted certain aspects of the native cultures of India and Egypt, respectively, in order to establish better relations with the native peoples, while maintaining a distinctively Hellenistic identity through things such as coinage. This is why both dynasties were able to endure from 305 BC to 330 BC and from 180 BC to 55 BC, respectively. Thus, while Demetrius I's military invasion of India ultimately failed and left little substantial impact on Indian culture or history, Menander I's choice to embrace the Buddhist religion helped to strengthen the Indo-Greek state, while also leaving a subtle but distinct impact on Indian art and culture.
Very good.
The reason why Menander succeeded in establishing a lasting Greek presence in what is now India is because, unlike his predecessor Demetrius I, he did not rely entirely on military conquest and violent subjugation of the native Indian peoples. Instead, Menander embraced certain aspects of Indian culture. More specifically, he gave patronage to the Buddhist religion and allowed them to practice their religion openly at a time when Buddhism was experiencing heavy persecution from the Shunga Empire. However, it is incorrect to say that Menander converted to Buddhism. Rather, he simply allowed the religion to flourish openly in his realm without fear of persecution in order to earn the loyalty of his Buddhist subjects. Other pieces of surviving evidence suggest that Menander remained a practicing believer in the traditional Greek gods for his whole life. Thus, his open-minded attitude towards Buddhism is representative of a clever monarch who recognized the benefits of allowing both his Greek and his native Indian subjects relative religious freedom while not favoring one religion over the other.